Hello, we're here today in the first series of the Postdoc Spotlight interviews with Dr. Daniel Kiss. Dr. Kiss, can you tell us more about yourself, your profession, your educational background? What do you do?
All right. Profession is I'm a primary investigator at a research institution, um, and that institution is Houston Methodist Research Institute. So basically, my job is to run a research lab, just like any faculty member at a research university would. The major difference is I do not have teaching responsibilities on top of that because I'm at an institute and I'm not at a university. As for my educational background, I took the long way to get there. I went to Cleveland State University for my undergraduate degree, and then I took a couple years away from science to travel and to get other experience. And after that, I went back to Cleveland State, got a master's degree, and then Case Western Reserve University, and also in Cleveland for my PhD. And until December, I was a postdoc at OSU after that.
Okay, so that is a quite a long journey. If you mind me asking, what made you take that break? What made you decide that you didn't want to go straight into master's and PhD and kind of explore other areas?
To be bluntly honest, I needed my sanity back because unlike most people that wind up in grad school for biomedical sciences, for sure, I didn't have a research scholarship as an undergraduate. I worked full time as an undergrad, and with some help from my parents, I paid my way through undergrad by working full time and going to school full time. So the reason I needed to take a master's is because I was, essentially working 40 hours a week, doing school 30 to 40 hours a week. My grades suffered because of it. So I graduated with a 2.999995 average from my undergraduate. So I needed time to decompress from all that work, and I also needed time to recover financially, just because just about every penny that I made went to either pay for tuition, books, or just to live. The couple of years that I took away from science really did help me a lot, both in regaining sanity and also looking back on it. There was no way I was mature enough straight out of undergrad to truly succeed in a graduate program. Had I gone straight in, I would not have succeeded, to put it bluntly.
That is pretty common. A lot of people tend to take a gap year, 2 gap years, or just take some time working in industry.
Right.
Yeah. So
very true.
Another question, could you describe some projects that you're working on, or give an overview currently of what exactly you're doing at Houston Methodist Research Institute?
Well, since I'm just establishing my lab, I don't actually have any experiments up and running yet because it takes a long time.
Oh, I can imagine, yes.
You to procure equipment when you have empty benches and no one to do the work. You just have to focus your time on pushing the paperwork through that needs to be done, getting your items ordered, and getting your staff recruited. But once I get my research lab up and running, I'll actually be continuing the work that I did at Ohio State as a postdoc.
Oh, yes. Could you talk more about that, kind of explain?
Right. I was a postdoc in Dan Schoenberg's lab. And he, at the time I joined, was the director of the RNA Center. He just stepped down from that post, but his lab is still active there. And my main project there was working with the cytoplasmic capping project. And basically, how to easily describe it. Every time a gene is transcribed into an RNA from its parent gene, that mRNA has a structure added on to the very beginning of it called the cap. And it used to be thought that if you lost that cap, that mRNA was doomed and it was going to be degraded.
Mm-hmm.
What the Schoenberg lab showed before I joined was that's not always the case. And there's actually a mechanism for the cell to add that cap back onto an RNA. So we've been chasing that for, close to 10 years now.
Wow.
And basically, my work there answered several of the basic questions about that process, and mostly about the RNAs that were targeted by that process.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm continuing to build upon that work, and basically it has a lot of implications for human disease. If you're translating protein from a shortened mRNA, you're not going to get the full-size protein. If you don't have the full-size protein, that the product could possibly have a completely different function, or it may not work at all. So there are many known genes where many known instances in cancer, for example,
yes.
where through some mutation you get a shortened protein that causes a cancer. So that's essentially one of the projects that I'll be working on. And the other project deals with a tumor suppressor protein called FIT. It's spelled SHIT. And my last work at the Schoenberg lab that was published showed that when you lose the expression of the FIT gene, which is lost in about half of all human cancers,
wow, okay.
it actually affects the translation of a small number of cancer driver genes. So I'm going to be following up on that as well.
That is very interesting work. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
Another question I have for you was, so you described a little bit about your research. Could you kind of narrow down one thing, your favorite thing about the research that you have done, or something that was most exciting to you, or even something that kind of motivates you and just pushes you to go in every day and keep doing what you're doing? So any of those questions you can kind of answer.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. But for research in general,
yes.
Ever since I was a kid, I always thought that knowing stuff was cool. Just to really put it very simply, ever since I was a kid, I thought knowing stuff was cool. And I couldn't understand why people didn't want to know more stuff. So about research in general, to me, the coolest thing about research is, especially if your research is at the cutting edge of what's known, which is what we all should be doing, because we shouldn't be researching a question someone else has already answered.
Yes, definitely.
But as you're doing research, if you really think about it, once you get your experiment, you design your experiment, you ask you have your hypothesis, you go through the process, you design your experiment to test that hypothesis, your experiment works, and you get an answer. Well,
yes.
If the answer is yes, no, what you thought of, or the opposite of what you thought, regardless of the answer, you are the first person in human history to know that little bit of knowledge.
And it must be very
That's
empowering.
always been really cool.
Yes, I can imagine.
That's always an exciting thing.
Thank you. That was a really great answer. Can you describe your experience at The Ohio State University a little bit more in terms of what did you like most about being here and being a postdoc at The Ohio State University?
That's a good question. What did I like most? For me, I'm an RNA molecular biologist. I made that decision early on to pursue RNA biology. Right after my master's, actually during my master's, I made that decision. And looking around, I only applied to graduate schools that had a decent number of RNA researchers.
Yes.
And at that time, Case Western Reserve had 25 or so people doing RNA biology work. So that's where I went, because I had a lot of variety and I had a really strong RNA community.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time I joined Ohio State in 2011, Ohio State had 27 or 28 RNA researchers.
Wow, so they kind
So
of caught
the
up.
thing, oh yeah, and they've actually surpassed Case by quite a bit now. There are probably 35 labs or so that do RNA work at
At
Ohio
the
State.
wow, 35 labs?
Yeah, right around there somewhere. It's in that neighborhood. The thing about that is, you know, in most of academia, RNA work is a niche uh, field.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now at Houston Methodist, out of the 40 or so primary investigators, there is a grand total of me that is an RNA-centered lab. So being spoiled with all those other RNA biologists is definitely the thing that was really attractive to me about OSU. It's why I went there for my postdoc. In addition to working with Dan, which the possibility seemed very attractive to me. But I knew that community would be great. And it's one of those things, because you work in RNA, you need specialized reagents. Since you have 30 labs, you can almost figure that in a pinch, if you need something, someone else has it.
Yes.
So all of those things are very good.
So a follow-up question on that: how do you plan on tackling this kind of challenge? It seems like then at Houston Methodist, if you are the only person essentially kind of specialized in that field.
Well, the easy answer is plan.
As with everything, yes.
Yeah, because I won't be able to get that reagent, if I'm out of it from someone else. So that means that you just have to plan ahead, be careful, watch your inventories, make sure you're not going to run out of something. The other thing is, well, I'm the only person here at Houston Methodist that does RNA work, strictly speaking.
Mm-hmm.
The Texas Medical Center is a large place. And essentially in the same space of an OSU campus, you have Houston Methodist Research Institute, you have MD Anderson, you have Baylor College of Medicine, you have University of Houston, you have University of Texas Southwestern. It's a very compact research environment. So while I'm the only RNA person here, there are at least four or five RNA labs in Baylor, and they're literally across the street.
So a lot of room for collaboration and kind
Correct.
of interdiscipline. Okay, I see that. All right, well, thank you for that. And I wanted to ask you, so when you're not busy working in your lab or working on your research, what is something that you like to do in your free time that kind of is unique to you?
Well, I wouldn't say any of these top couple are unique to me, but I have a 10-and-a-half-month-old baby girl.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
So I love to spend time with her. I love to spend time with my wife. Family, it's always very important. And, regardless of where you are in your career, I think it's very important to remember that, you work to support your family.
Yes.
Your family doesn't support your work. It's kind of, you need that priority to have the family first, because if you're not, paying attention to them, what's the point, in my opinion?
Exactly.
But as for other than spending time with family and doing things with family, what I love to do to really decompress is I'm a cyclist, so I love to get out for 30, 40 miles on a bike just to think about nothing in particular. It's really great. I recommend it to anybody.
So I asked most of my questions. You did a great job of answering them. Thank you for that. Is there anything else that you would want to add? Since, as I mentioned before, we want to use this as an opportunity to highlight the people that have been or are postdocs at The Ohio State University, because as you can imagine, we have expanded vastly. We have around 700 postdocs now, and you guys are all doing all these amazing things. You with your RNA work, and it's hard for people to kind of find that amongst those 700. So to kind of ask my question again, is there anything that you'd like to add or talk about once again that you feel is really important to you or you'd like other people to know?
Right. Well, things that I feel are really important are to remember your priorities. Everybody, whenever you talk about work-life balance, that's quite often uh, in academic circles. It's quite often yeah, right. You don't have balance. You just work, 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 work. No,
Yes.
don't accept that. You don't have to accept that. Um, and it's one of those things that you just have to remember. You have to take time for yourself too, and that's a critical thing, especially when you're as busy as a postdoc because you're always busy.
Yes, it's the academic life is based on that, always on the run, on the go, as we can all imagine. And that concludes our postdoc spotlight interview for today. Thank you, Dr. Daniel Kiss, for taking the time to speak with us today. And to everyone listening, we hope you enjoyed and got to learn a little bit more about the great postdocs in our community. We hope you tune in for the next spotlight interviews. See you then.